Commander Vrex slammed his primary appendage against the control panel, creating a satisfying thud that echoed through the cramped bridge of the detention vessel's silent hunger. The human specimen had been contained for exactly 73 hours, 14 minutes, and 27 seconds, and still showed no signs of the expected deterioration. This is absolutely impossible. Vrex's mandibles clicked in frustration. According to our bioscans, humans require sustenance every 24 to 36 hours, or they begin to experience significant physical decline. Science Officer Klatt peered at her holographic displays, her 4 eyes blinking in rapid succession. Sir, the human appears to be thriving. Her vital signs are actually improving. Improving? How can she be improving? We removed all food sources from the containment bay. Vrex's voice rose to a pitch that made several crew members wince. We followed standard protocol for carbon-based life-form interrogation. Through the transparent aluminum viewing port, they could observe their human prisoner, Dr. Maya Torres, who was currently engaged in what appeared to be gardening. She had somehow fashioned primitive tools from debris and was carefully tending to several small green plants that had apparently sprouted from nowhere. Sir, Communications Specialist Grix interjected nervously, should we perhaps consider providing the specimen with proper nutrition? The Galactic Council's Ethics Committee might have concerns if we accidentally terminate the subject through negligence. Vrex's eye stalks swiveled to glare at the unfortunate communications officer. Negligence? Negligence? We are conducting a perfectly standard 5-day starvation protocol. Every species in the known galaxy breaks within 4 days. This is supposed to be simple psychological warfare. Dr. Torres looked up from her makeshift garden and waved cheerfully at the observation window. She appeared to be chewing on something green and leafy. What is she eating? Vrex demanded. Klatt frantically manipulated her scanner controls. I'm detecting chlorophyll-based organic matter, sir. It appears to be vegetation of some kind. Vegetation? There is no vegetation in that containment cell. We specifically chose a sterile environment. Well, sir, Klatt said hesitantly, there wasn't any vegetation when we put her in there. The uncomfortable silence that followed was broken only by the gentle humming sound of the ship's life support systems. Vrex felt a familiar tingling in his posterior brain cluster, the one that typically activated when dealing with humans and their inexplicable behavior. Scan the entire containment area, he ordered. I want to know where those plants came from. The scanning process took several minutes, during which Dr. Torres continued her agricultural activities with what could only be described as disturbing enthusiasm. She had apparently constructed a small irrigation system using condensation from the ventilation ducts. Sir, Klatt announced, her voice tinged with confusion, the plants appear to be common stellar drift moss, vacuum kelp, and something that registers as highly nutritious space cabbage. All of these species are typically considered non-edible by civilized standards. Space cabbage? Vrex repeated slowly. That purple stuff that grows in asteroid fields? The very same, sir. Most species consider it mildly toxic, and she's eating it? Apparently with great relish, sir. Vrex watched in mounting horror as Dr. Torres harvested a handful of the purple vegetation and consumed it with obvious satisfaction. She then proceeded to water her plants using some kind of improvised container that looked suspiciously like it had been fashioned from her own shoe. How did she even know those things were edible? Vrex muttered. Perhaps we should ask her, suggested Grix. The entire bridge crew turned to stare at the communications officer, as if he had just suggested they all strip naked and perform interpretive dance. Ask her. Vrex's voice was dangerously quiet. We are conducting an interrogation, not hosting a dinner party. But sir, if she's willing to talk. The whole point of the starvation protocol is to break her will. She's supposed to be begging us for food by now. Dr. Torres chose that moment to stretch contentedly and lay down for what appeared to be a nap, using a pillow she had somehow constructed from dried moss in her jacket. She's taking a nap, Klatt observed unnecessarily. I can see that she's taking a nap. Vrex snapped. The question is, why is she taking a nap instead of slowly dying of malnutrition like every other species in the known galaxy? The ship's AI, A particularly unhelpful unit designated Brain 47 chose that moment to chime in with its customary lack of timing. Commander Vrex, perhaps the human is experiencing what her species calls camping. Camping? Vrex's eye stalks rotated toward the nearest speaker. What is camping? According to the cultural database, camping is a recreational activity wherein humans voluntarily subject themselves to primitive living conditions for the purpose of enjoyment. Enjoyment? Vrex's voice had reached a frequency that was causing the ship's crystal resonators to vibrate sympathetically. She's enjoying this? The bio readings suggest elevated levels of what humans call happiness hormones, sir. Vrex slumped into his command chair, which squeaked protestingly under his weight. In his 40 years of service with the Galactic Detention Authority, he had never encountered a prisoner who treated incarceration like a vacation. Sir, Klatt said softly. Perhaps we should review our intelligence files on human behavior. Our intelligence files are comprehensive, Vrex protested. Humans are supposed to be soft, weak, dependent creatures who require constant feeding and climate control. Well, sir, our files might be slightly outdated. Dr. Torres had apparently awakened from her nap and was now engaged in what looked like exercises. She was performing some kind of rhythmic movement that involved jumping and moving her limbs in coordination. What is she doing now? Vrex asked wearily. It appears to be a form of physical conditioning, sir. Humans call it jumping jacks. She's exercising, Vrex said flatly. Our prisoner, who has been without food for over 3 days, is exercising. Yes, sir. Making that, and she's humming. It appears to be a human musical composition, sir. Something about working in a coal mine. Vrex rubbed his temples with his manipulator appendages. Brain 47. Run a diagnostic on the containment field. I want to make absolutely certain she hasn't somehow smuggled in supplies. Diagnostic complete, Commander. No contraband detected. The subject has successfully converted ambient environmental elements into a sustainable micro-ecosystem using only materials that were already present in the detention cell. That's impossible. Apparently not, sir. Dr. Torres had moved on to constructing what appeared to be furniture from her available materials. She had somehow woven dried moss and fabric scraps into a surprisingly comfortable-looking chair. She's redecorating, Klatt observed with what might have been admiration. This is a nightmare, Vrex muttered. We're supposed to be the advanced species here. We have technology that can travel faster than light, manipulate matter at the molecular level, and create artificial gravity fields. And this primitive biped is making us look like incompetent amateurs. Perhaps, Grix suggested tentatively, we could try a different approach, such as, well, sir, maybe we could actually talk to her, find out what she wants, what she knows, why she was in restricted space to begin with. Vrex stared at his communications officer for a long moment. You mean conduct an actual interrogation instead of just waiting for her to collapse from hunger? It's a radical concept, sir. Dr. Torres had apparently finished her decorating and was now sitting in her improvised chair, looking directly at the observation window. She smiled and raised her hand in what the cultural database identified as a friendly wave. She knows we're watching her. Vrex realized. She's known the entire time, sir, Klatt said. In fact, I believe she's been performing for our benefit. Performing? Look at the positioning of her activities, sir. Everything she's done has been clearly visible from this window. She's been putting on a show. The implications of this observation slowly sank in. Dr. Torres hadn't just been surviving their interrogation protocol, she had been demonstrating her ability to thrive under conditions that would break most civilized beings. And she had been doing it deliberately, knowing they were watching. She's been toying with us, Vrex said quietly. Yes, sir. A human has been toying with us. That appears to be the case, sir. Vrex stood up slowly, his joints creaking in protest. Brain 47. Open a communication channel to the detention cell. Channel open, Commander. The soft hiss of the communication system activating filled the bridge. Dr. Torres looked up expectantly, as if she had been waiting for this moment. Dr. Torres, Vrex began, trying to inject some authority into his voice. Oh, hi there. Dr. Torres replied cheerfully. I was wondering when you'd get around to actually talking to me. This silent treatment thing was getting a bit old. Don't you think? Vrex felt his posterior brain cluster tingling again. You are aware that you are being detained under suspicion of violating Galactic Space Regulation 47 Alpha? Sure am. Though I have to say, your hospitality could use some work. No welcome basket, no information packet, not even a mint on the pillow. She gestured to her moss pillow. I had to make my own pillow. Dr. Torres, this is a detention facility, not a resort, could have fooled me. Though I have to admit, the room service is terrible. I've been here 3 days and nobody's brought me so much as a glass of water. That was intentional. Oh, I figured as much. Good thing I know how to improvise. She held up a handful of purple space cabbage. Did you know this stuff is actually pretty tasty once you get used to it? A bit of a kick to it, like spicy lettuce. Clat leaned toward Vrex and whispered, Sir, space cabbage is supposed to cause severe digestive distress in most species. That most species aren't human, Dr. Torres called out, apparently having overheard. Humans have what you might call an adventurous relationship with food. We're the species that looked at a cow and said, I bet that thing would taste good if we killed it, aged the meat for weeks, then cooked it over an open flame. That does sound rather barbaric, Grix commented. Oh, that's nothing, Dr. Torres continued. We also eat fermented fish sauce, moldy cheese, and vegetables that are literally toxic until we process them correctly. My grandmother used to make something called lutefisk, which is basically fish soaked in lye until it becomes a gelatinous mess, and people actually consider it a delicacy. The bridge crew exchanged worried glances. They were beginning to understand that their assumption about human dietary requirements might have been somewhat optimistic. Dr. Torres, Vrex tried again. We need to discuss your presence in restricted space. Oh, that. Yeah, I was collecting samples. Samples of what? Extremophile organisms. Bacteria, mostly, but also some interesting plant-like entities that seem to thrive in hard vacuum. Fascinating stuff, really. Most species consider these environments completely lifeless, but there's actually a whole ecosystem out there if you know where to look. And you were collecting these organisms. Why? Research. I'm an exobiologist specializing in survival mechanisms. My particular area of interest is how different life forms adapt to hostile environments. Vrex felt a sinking sensation in his primary stomach. Hostile environments. Exactly. Like this one, for instance. Most beings would consider a sterile detention cell to be completely unsurvivable, but there are actually trace amounts of organic compounds in the air filtration system. Moisture condensation provides water, and the lighting spectrum is surprisingly conducive to photosynthesis for certain adapted species. You turned our detention cell into a laboratory. Guilty as charged. Though to be fair, you did give me plenty of time to work. 3 days is more than enough to establish a basic growing environment if you know what you're doing. Clat was frantically taking notes. Commander, I believe we may have significantly underestimated human survival capabilities. You think? Vrex replied dryly. Dr. Torres stretched again, looking remarkably comfortable for someone who was supposed to be suffering from severe malnutrition and psychological stress. So, what's the next phase of this interrogation? Because I have to say, the isolation and starvation thing really isn't working out the way you probably hoped. The next phase, Vrex said slowly, is that we talk. Excellent. I do love a good conversation. Fair warning, though. I've been talking to my plants for the last day and a half, so I might be a bit chattier than usual. You talk to plants? Doesn't everyone? Studies show it helps them grow better. Something about the carbon dioxide in exhaled breath, plus the sound vibrations. Very scientific. Grix leaned toward his console. Sir, should I prepare the enhanced interrogation chamber? No, Vrex said firmly. Something tells me that our usual methods are going to be ineffective with this particular subject. Dr. Torres had apparently overheard this exchange as well. Oh, enhanced interrogation. That sounds exciting. Does it involve more creative environmental challenges? Because I have to say, The basic survival scenario was actually pretty fun once I got into it. The bridge fell silent, except for the gentle humming of the life support systems. Vrex stared at the cheerful human who had just described a standard detention protocol as fun and realized that everything he thought he knew about interrogation was about to be completely reevaluated. "Dr. Torres," he said finally, "I think we need to start this whole process over. Sounds good to me. But can we maybe do it over lunch? All this surviving has worked up quite an appetite, and while space cabbage is surprisingly filling, a girl could use some variety in her diet." Vrex looked at his crew, then back at the human who had just requested lunch after successfully surviving what should have been a devastating psychological torture technique. "Brain 47, he said wearily. "Contact the galley and have them prepare a meal for our guest." "What type of meal would you prefer, Dr. Torres?" the AI asked. "Surprise me." "Just maybe avoid anything that's supposed to be toxic to humans. I've had enough adventure food for one day." As the communication channel closed, Vrex slumped back into his command chair and contemplated the growing possibility that humans might be significantly more dangerous than anyone in the galactic community had realized. 2 hours later, Vrex found himself in the unprecedented situation of sharing a meal with his prisoner. The galley had outdone themselves, preparing a feast of traditional Zephyrian delicacies including crystallized meteor dust, fermented solar algae, and their finest imported nebula nectar. Dr. Torres examined each dish with scientific curiosity before taking cautious bites. "This is fascinating. The meteor dust has a wonderful crunch, and the algae has this complex umami flavor. Very sophisticated palate development in your species. You do realize," Vrex said carefully, "that most of what you just ate would be considered exotic delicacies worth a small fortune on most civilized worlds?" "Really? That's awesome. Thanks for the fancy dinner." She paused, chewing thoughtfully. "Though I have to ask, why the sudden hospitality? Not that I'm complaining, but this is quite a change from the whole starve until you break approach." Tactical Officer Zane, who had joined them for this informal interrogation session, leaned forward. "Dr. Torres, we need to understand something. How did you know those plants in your cell were safe to eat?" "Oh, that's easy. Basic xenobotany. Most life forms that evolve in space environments develop similar biochemical markers. The purple coloration indicated high levels of anthocyanins, which are typically antioxidants. The cellular structure showed it was probably high in protein, and the smell test confirmed it wasn't producing any obvious toxins." "Smell test?" Klatt asked. "Sure. Humans have pretty good noses when we pay attention. Anything that smells sweet or fruity is usually safe, while bitter or acrid scents often indicate alkaloids or other defense compounds. Space cabbage smells like regular cabbage mixed with ozone. Totally edible." Vrex felt his eye stalks drooping. "You identified the biochemical composition of an unknown alien plant by smelling it." "Among other things, yes. I also tested tiny amounts on my skin first, then on my lips, then took very small taste before committing to a full meal. Standard survival protocol when dealing with unknown food sources." "Standard survival protocol," Zane repeated slowly. "Every human learns basic survival skills, right? How to find water, identify edible plants, construct shelter, make fire. It's fundamental education." The three aliens exchanged glances that somehow managed to convey both amazement and terror. "Dr. Torres," Vrex said carefully, "most civilized species have moved beyond the need for such primitive skills." "Primitive? These skills kept our ancestors alive for millions of years. Besides, you never know when you might need them. More like when you're illegally detained by aliens who forget to pack lunch." She grinned cheerfully at them. "About that," Klatt interjected, "you mentioned you were collecting samples in restricted space. What exactly were you researching?" "Streamophile adaptation mechanisms. See, most species evolve in relatively stable environments, right? Predictable temperature ranges, consistent atmospheric composition, regular day-night cycles. But humans evolved on a planet that was actively trying to kill us. Trying to kill you? Zane asked. Oh yeah. Ice ages, volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, predators with teeth the size of your arm, diseases that could wipe out entire populations, weather patterns that could shift from tropical to Arctic in a matter of decades. Earth is basically a cosmic horror show from a habitability standpoint. That sounds terrible, Klatt said sympathetically. Terrible? It was the best thing that ever happened to us. All that environmental pressure forced us to become the most adaptable species in the galaxy. We can eat almost anything, survive in temperature ranges that would kill most beings, and problem-solve our way out of situations that would leave other species completely helpless. Vrex was beginning to understand why the Galactic Council had classified humans as a potential threat species despite their apparent technological primitiveness. Dr. Torres, when you say you can eat almost anything, I mean almost anything. Humans have consumed over 3,000 different plant species, hundreds of animal species, various fungi, fermented beverages that are technically poison, even foods so spicy they cause physical pain. We literally eat things for fun that other species use as weapons. Weapons? Zane looked confused. Capsaicin. You know the stuff in hot peppers? It evolved as a defense mechanism to prevent mammals from eating certain plants. Humans took one bite, said this burns in the most delightful way, and bred the plants to be even spicier. You bred plants to be more poisonous so you could eat them, Vrex said flatly. Exactly. Same thing with alcohol. Most species would consider ethanol to be a dangerous toxin. Humans discovered that certain fruits naturally ferment, got drunk, decided it was hilarious, and spent the next 10,000 years perfecting the process. The silence that followed was broken only by the gentle hum of the ship's engines. Dr. Torres, Klatt said quietly, are humans aware that they're terrifying? Terrifying? US? Nah, we're friendly. Sure, we have some quirks, but most of human culture is built around cooperation and sharing resources. We're social creatures who eat poison for entertainment, Zane muttered. Only some of us. And it's really more about the endorphin rush than the poison itself. When humans experience certain types of stress or pain, our brains release natural opioids that make us feel good. So things like spicy food, extreme sports, horror movies, or survival challenges actually become enjoyable because of the biochemical response. Your species experiences pleasure from situations that should cause suffering, Vrex said slowly. When you put it like that, it does sound a bit weird, Dr. Torres admitted. But it served us pretty well. Take this situation, for example. Most beings would be traumatized by illegal detention and attempted starvation. For me, it's just an interesting puzzle to solve. It's a puzzle, sure. How do I survive with limited resources? How do I turn a hostile environment into a livable space? How do I maintain psychological stability under stress? These are fascinating challenges. Tactical Officer Zane leaned back in his chair, which creaked ominously. Dr. Torres, I need to ask you something, and I want you to answer honestly. Shoot. Are you actually a scientist, or are you some kind of military operative? Dr. Torres laughed, a sound that somehow managed to be both delightful and slightly unnerving. I'm definitely a scientist, though I did spend a few years in the Peace Corps before graduate school. Peace Corps? It's a volunteer organization where humans go to underdeveloped regions and help with infrastructure, education, healthcare, that sort of thing. I spent 2 years in the Amazon rainforest helping indigenous communities develop sustainable agriculture techniques. In a rainforest, Klatt said, which is presumably full of things that want to kill you. Oh, absolutely. Venomous snakes, poisonous frogs, insects that carry deadly diseases, plants that can cause severe burns, parasites that burrow into your skin, and predators that can swallow you whole, plus constant heat, humidity, and the very real possibility of getting completely lost in millions of acres of jungle. And you volunteered for this. Best 2 years of my life. I learned so much about adaptive ecosystems and survival strategies. Plus, the local communities taught me incredible techniques for identifying edible plants, natural medicine, and sustainable resource management. Vrex rubbed his temples again. The tingling in his posterior brain cluster had evolved into a full-scale throbbing sensation. Dr. Torres, I'm beginning to suspect that your research in restricted space wasn't just academic curiosity. Well, no, not entirely. I was specifically looking for organisms that could survive in extreme environments because I'm working on a project to develop sustainable life support systems for long-term space exploration. Space exploration. Exactly. If humans are going to spread throughout the galaxy, we need to understand how to survive in environments that don't naturally support life. The organisms I was collecting could potentially be used to create closed-loop ecosystems that would allow human colonies to thrive on planets that other species would consider completely uninhabitable. The three aliens stared at her in growing horror. Dr. Torres, Vrex said very carefully, are you telling us that humans are planning to colonize worlds that are too hostile for other species? Not just planning. We're already doing it. There are human settlements on worlds with surface temperatures below freezing, others on planets with toxic atmospheres, and some in asteroid belts where there's no atmosphere at all. Humans tend to look at impossible living conditions and think, challenge accepted. Clat was furiously taking notes. Commander, I believe we need to update our threat assessment files immediately. You think we're a threat? Dr. Torres looked genuinely surprised. That's so sweet. Most species just think we're weird. Dr. Torres, Zane said slowly. You've just described a species that thrives in conditions that would kill most civilized beings, actively seeks out dangerous environments for entertainment, and is apparently spreading throughout the galaxy by colonizing worlds that nobody else wants. When you put it like that, I guess we do sound a bit intense, she admitted. But really, we're mostly harmless. We just like a good challenge. Mostly harmless, Vrex repeated. Sure. I mean, yes, we have a few aggressive tendencies, and our history is full of warfare and conquest, and we do have this unfortunate habit of turning everything into a competition. But deep down, we're really quite pleasant. Warfare and conquest, Clat said faintly. Oh, that's mostly behind us now. These days we channel our competitive instincts into sports, academic research, and seeing who can survive in the most ridiculous environments. Much healthier than the old days when we used to fight wars over resources and territory. What do you fight wars over now? Zane asked. We don't, really. Mostly we just argue about politics and whether pineapple belongs on pizza. Pineapple? It's a fruit. Some humans think it's delicious on pizza, others consider it an abomination. Very passionate debates on both sides. Vrex stood up slowly, his joints protesting after the long interrogation session. Dr. Torres, I think we need to have a conversation with our superiors. About what? About what? About the fact that we've been treating humanity as a primitive species when you're actually the most terrifying life form in the known galaxy. Dr. Torres looked genuinely hurt. Terrifying? That's not fair. We're adaptive and resilient, sure, but we're also curious and friendly, and we make excellent neighbors once you get to know us. Dr. Torres, Vrex said wearily, you've been imprisoned for 4 days without food, and you've spent the entire time cheerfully turning our detention facility into a sustainable ecosystem while treating the whole experience like an entertaining vacation. So that's exactly the kind of thing that makes other species nervous about humans. Oh. Dr. Torres considered this. I suppose it is a bit unusual. But really, once you understand human psychology, we're quite predictable. We like challenges, we enjoy solving problems, and we have an irrepressible urge to make friends with everyone we meet. Make friends, Clat repeated. Absolutely. In fact, I've really enjoyed our conversation. You guys seem like decent people, even if your interrogation techniques need some work. Vrex looked at his officers, then back at the human who had just complimented them after being illegally detained and subjected to what was supposed to be psychological torture. Dr. Torres, he said finally, would you be interested in consulting on our detention facility protocols? Really? That sounds like fun. I have lots of ideas about how to make imprisonment more humane and effective. Though you might want to consider that your current approach actually makes humans more dangerous, not less. More dangerous? Sure. Boredom is humanity's greatest enemy. Give us a problem to solve, and we're happy. Try to break our spirits through isolation and deprivation, and we just get creative about finding new ways to survive and thrive. It's much better to keep us busy with interesting challenges. Vrex sank back into his chair and contemplated the disturbing realization that humanity had just accidentally given them a tutorial on effective human management by demonstrating why their current methods were completely useless. Brain 47, he called to the ship's AI. Prepare a priority communication to Galactic Command. Subject: urgent revision required for human threat assessment protocols. Should I mention that they consider imprisonment to be a recreational activity? The AI asked. Definitely mention that, Vrex replied. And Brain 47? Yes, Commander. Add a note that any future human detentions should probably include meal service and entertainment options, for our own safety. Dr. Torres clapped her hands together delightedly. See? You guys are learning already. This is going to be the beginning of a beautiful friendship. As Vrex watched the cheerfully terrifying human scientist who had just revolutionized their understanding of detention protocols, he couldn't help but think that the galaxy was about to become a much more interesting place.